think?
The baby of 10 children.
Okay.
There were 2 boys. They worked on this huge estate, which was owned by the heir, V.O.N. His grandfather had won this estate in there for a famous battle stroke, as they called it, Schlag. Anyhow, it was like feudal days. They had a village of the workers, and Mother explained that to me. They each had a little cottage, the workers. They had a little garden in the back where they grew their cabbages and their potatoes, and a little flax, and maybe had room for a pig that her Mama's mother had. Her dad died young. Have you heard that story? Mama was just a baby, and she doesn't remember anything except he was very gemütlich, which means easy going. And he would get her on his lap and push back the what you call it?
Cuticles on her fingers.
The cuticles on her fingers. But he had to bury, he and another man had to dig a grave in winter time. It evidently wasn't freezing hard enough that they didn't put him in a shed like a lot of them did till spring, till it thawed. But this was in Konigsberg, which, not Konigsberg, East Prussia, which was a province of Germany's, other side of Poland. But anyhow, he died that evening at the table of the deceased's family, which was a custom there.
Okay.
To feed the grave diggers and the pastor. And he fell asleep. He died right in his plate at the table with a severe heart attack.
From the hard work, you figure?
Digging that grave, because it was icy and hard, and he and this other man had to do it while the other men wouldn't help. They were in the inn drinking their beer. And it angered him, too, even though he, like I say, he was an easygoing man. Anyhow, Mother was indentured out, as they were, to work as housekeepers or maids or whatever, and she went to Berlin to work. A girlfriend got her a job there with this, what was he, in the Navy? Admiral.
Okay.
Admiral Winkler. Okay. And she worked there, and I have to tell you a cute little story. Her maid, they got Sundays off, or part of it at least, and her friend came to see her, and she was in hysterics, laughing. Oh, she'd been to the zoo, and she said, what is, you know, what I have seen, was ich hab sehen, and she couldn't tell what she had seen, but it was she finally got out of her that it was at the elephants area. And she says, oh, but what I've seen, and she'd laugh so hard, and that's what makes the story cute, is because nobody knows what she saw.
So her father, his occupation was
working on that place. I don't know what he did.
Kind of like a caretaker.
Yeah, but her 2 brothers were teamsters. At least one of them was on the place, and they took good care of their team, and they and another fellow were vying to who could keep the team the sleekest, and they took extra oats and got in trouble with the Lord. Although they were excused because it was his place, you know. They raised all kinds of wheat fields. It was like a county. Mm-hmm. It was so big. And they had wheat fields and barley and rye, and Mama told how there was a big shed. When they were young teenagers, they had to go there and turn that stuff with forks or whatever they had, because it was getting musty. And they had open sides, but roofs were that wintered over. Barley and rye and who knows what all. And they also could go to the forests and pick up limbs. There was woods and, oh my, streams, you know. Those lords had fish running, just like in England, and they fished there. So anyhow, there were 7 sisters then, and she was the baby. She was the youngest. And after the war, or during the war, the Russians came and took her oldest sister and husband, who were married, and they were getting old, you know, And they were a darling old couple, and she'd be so good to him when he'd come in from out whatever his job or what, if he's still working. She always had his slippers warming by the hearth. And they were put in a truck and were taken east towards the concentration camps. But they died on the truck, as many did, you know, on the trucks. They were just herded in like cattle for hours on end, and once in a great while they were let out, I think, to go in the woods or go, you know, to the bathroom or maybe get some water, but they were trampled in those trucks. They were buried and scratched into a big manure pile on the way, that old couple. And it was just a terrible thing, yeah. I have the clipping that many years later, here Mom is in America. They were alone, her and Dad were alone over on the ranch just a few years before they sold it. And one of Dad's brothers, Uncle Herman, lived in eastern Oregon. His wife had died, and his kids were growing up too. They were from Coquille. They were farmers there. And he was a cabinet maker. That he had been indentured out to a cabinet maker. The other brother, Uncle Ernest, lived in Bandon, and he was a blacksmith, and there's stories there about that I've written for the family. And he built the first light plant he was a, what do you call it? What Chris is?
He was an engineer.
Yeah. He built the first light plant in North Bend. Anyhow, where was I? I was later. Uncle Herman in eastern Oregon had remarried, and his wife had a dear lifelong friend. Her name was Gertrude. She was a nurse, so she looked out for them. But anyhow, he got little papers and magazines from Germany. Uncle Herman did, and he gave Mom several, mailed them to her, and she read something in there about four or five little girls in Germany who went to the beach one day. Mama was one of these, but she didn't know it then. She'd forgotten it, but they laid in a circle on the sand after playing in the ocean, in the Baltic. And they were telling stories, and they got to talking about who they'd like to be. Well, I'd like to be the Kaiser's Frau, his wife. Oh, Mother said, well, she wouldn't like that. And one other said, I'd like to be the Kaiser. Oh, and Mama's oldest sister, the one that got killed, she spoke up, and she had never said much, but it was very to the point when she did. She said, what use is it, in German of course, what use is it being the Kaiser when he can't go to the bathroom because he had constipation? And that was in this bulletin. And Mama thought, she had a vague feeling soon that it was something familiar about that. And that was when she was a girl and had gone to the beach with her sisters, her married sisters. They took off and went to the Baltic, about 4 miles. They walked and took an apple or two, a little lunch, and went there and played by the ocean. And that had been said there by her oldest sister, but it didn't name names. But it was, and I have that write-up.